Ilaria Bonacossa, I'm the director of ARTISSIMA, the Contemporary Art Fair in Torino. It was a public call, actually. I had worked in Torino 10 years as a curator in Fondazione Sandretto Re Baudengo. Then I started working freelance. Then I was a director of a museum in Genova, Museo Villa Croce, and then there was a public call. I was ready for a change, and it's a new adventure to be working with an art fair. Well, I think the first thing I started thinking when I was nominated was like, why Artissima, why the art fair in Torino? And in a way, there are too many art fairs, everybody complains. On the other hand, collectors go around the world following the art fairs and not the biennials like maybe they used to do 10 years ago. And I think probably one of the answers is that yes, there are so many new art fairs, but there are even more new private museums in the world. So I think the art fairs respond to this need that the collectors are writing their own art history. And the private collector, to write his own art history, is not going to look at the museum to decide what is the art of the future, but goes to the art fairs and wants to pick, to build his own canon. And so art fairs function in this system, I think. I guess for a week I didn't sleep. I thought I had sold my soul to the devil. But the truth is that there are not two art worlds anymore. There's one art world, and it's a kind of an art world that develops, and it develops both in the institutional side and in the commercial side. And the galleries need the institutions need the galleries, and it's kind of one ecosystem, kind of complex. It's not so easy to really understand it, and the fairs are part of this complex system because it's really one place where all the players come together. Because at a fair you find the collector, the curator, the art critic, the gallerist, the museum director, and the artist. And so all the parts of the system come together in a very short time, and they kind of question what the system is. I was working in this institution, which was public, owned by the city, but run on private money. And, it was public, it was open to the visitors, but I was going to the sponsors to talk about it. And in a way, now that I'm working in the fair, which is public because Artissima is owned by the city of Torino and the region of Piemonte, it's not very different, the dynamics, because in a way, our income goes back to the public institutions of the city. So in a way, we are in a system. And maybe this is also why the fair has always had a bit of this curatorial identity, because its goal is to make the best fair ever, to make the galleries have a great experience and a great experience of Torino. Well, first, one part of the answer is no, not all. I guess not all the fairs should have all the ecosystem. One idea is probably, my answer is, if a fair has a very strong identity, there's a reason to go. And I think Torino has a strong identity because it's one of the few fairs that does only contemporary art. It doesn't do modern, it doesn't do secondary market. It's always been a fair with a very strong curatorial and talent scouting identity. It has two historical curated sections, Back to the Future, which started 11 years ago, which is about re-bringing to the public attention talents, and Present Future, which is an invitation-only young artist project. And this year we're launching a new curated section, which is called Disegni, Drawings, which will have solo shows of drawings by artists. And the idea of this new section is, a little bit because I love drawings and because Italy has this tradition of cabinets of drawings and collections, but also because what I like is that the drawing is, in a way, the artist's way of thinking. And it's also something that even people who are not in the art world so much kind of know what a drawing is. And maybe they like it, maybe they don't like it, but they won't question if it's art or not art. So I think it's also a good way to let people not in the art world enter this system. For me, it's clear that the center clients are the galleries, and then obviously the other player are the collectors, because if you don't get the collectors, you don't give the galleries the service that they're paying from you. We have nearly 190 galleries, and we really try to help them. One good thing of ARTISSIMA, I think, is that the teams that deal with the galleries have been working for the fair for a very long time. Laura Pongiluppi, who does Italian galleries, has been there nearly 19 years, and Giuditta Zaniboni, who does international gallery, has been there nearly 15 years. And whenever I go around, people say that they're fantastic, that they really know what a gallery needs, how to make it work, really following all the process. And in this, they're really helping me, because obviously I've never been on this side of the art world, and we're really learning. And yes, galleries really need to be supported and, help to meet people and introduce, because it's true, one side of the fair is sales, but one side of the fair is connections. So obviously you can't guarantee sales. You can guarantee to have good collectors, but at the end it's random who buys when. But if you allow galleries to really meet even new collectors, even if they don't sell then, they might sell at the next fair where they'll meet the collector again, or after 3 months when they have a show of an artist. So the network part of the business is very important. I think this was more like, I think in the last 2-3 years, and I wasn't the director, so it's not my merit, this has significantly changed. The fair has really invested, and with me it's even doing it even more on developing the collectors' projects and programs. This year we're also working with Abazemir Vali, who's developing collectors' talks and projects, and we are really developing on even growing new collectors, because I think in one way the problem is linked to the Italian economy, which has nothing to do with fairs, but the Italian economy has been struggling, and this is why we've been bringing international collectors in. But I think one big gamble is building new collectors in Italy, because obviously we have a historical group of great collectors, but it's maybe not enough to sustain a system. But there are many young bankers, lawyers, business people who maybe are not traditionally so versed in contemporary art. But the public attention and the fact that magazines talk about art a lot and everything make it always more on the radar, even of people who don't have a big knowledge. And the fair is a good place to start, because obviously if you are not so knowledgeable and passionate, the first times you go to a gallery, it's kind of embarrassing to ask a price. How do you deal with who you are? And fairs are good places to start. So we're really developing this part of the... And I mean, from what I heard in the last years, it's been going very well. Then on the other hand, I think different fairs should cater to different markets. ARTISSIMA has always been a fair about discovering talents. And if you see it in this way, I was studying a bit the history of the fair, and it's had curators as directors many times, Andrea Bellini, Francesco Manacorda, and you really see that artists who've won prizes in ARTISSIMA then become internationally very relevant, but maybe after 8 years, 11 years, which is really a big time gap for the art world. It's not like 2 years before. And this is also very important for collectors, and maybe the fair has not communicated this enough, because it's really the right place to gamble on younger artists, because the fair concentrates on that. It really allows you to discover some of the great art of the future. Well, fairs are a good way to start, because in a country like Italy, where there's this guilt to talk about money, it's the Catholic culture has this thing about money being something that is not public. The fair kind of frees you from this issue. A fair is about selling, so obviously asking the price is part of the game, even if you're not going to buy. It's not embarrassing. While maybe in a gallery, I think someone who's not used to it feels that if they ask the price, then in some way it means they're interested and it's a commitment. So I think in that sense, fairs are a good place to start. And also I think in this society where the one thing that no one has is time, even the richest collectors don't have more time than other human beings. The fair is the one place where in a way you feel that in a few hours, days, you kind of get the temperature of what the art world is and what's happening. And I think this for a collector is kind of a precious occasion. I think in a way I was laughing. I was saying the other day, they were talking about, the issue between fairs and auction houses and this competition. And I was thinking that, for Artissima, this is not a competition, because once you step out of that corporate model of business, the auction house is not something that would ever auction the artists we look for. So in a funny way, I was laughing, saying it's like being the non-aligned art fair. Like in the Cold War, when you had the two blocks, and then you had the non-aligned countries, and there are some fairs that in a way are the non-aligned art fairs, because they're really about sustaining the growth of artists' careers, not about the market. And obviously the market is there, no one, it's it's a given, it's not something you can really discuss. But it's true that even the artists that become super blue chip have to have their first gallery shows, and their first gallery shows cannot be in the blue chip, because when you're starting, you have to be in a place where you're still understanding what art you want to make, how you want to make it, and so there'll always be space for galleries that discover talent, that support the growth of an artist's career. And it's one of the reasons why I love going to Liste so much, because you kind of feel that this is happening all the time. I didn't change the committee of the galleries because I thought about it a long time, and then I realized I didn't know how a committee was. So I decided I wanted to see a committee to figure out how to change it, if to change it, with some ideas, because changing the curators was something very easy for me. I worked with curators all my life. I was ready to change and work with people I knew. Maybe in general, the curators working on the next edition of Artissima are kind of younger compared to the version of 2016, and less institutional. This is because I think if you really have to look for talent, being outside of institutions allows you more freedom to really go and discover young artists and see work which is a bit out of all the rules of an institution.